Welcome to Retroing episode 7 with myself, Adam, and my co-host,
Andy. Hello.
Hello there, and welcome to the show, everyone who's listening. Today's episode is basically a Spielberg special. In a career spanning more than 4 decades, Spielberg's films have encompassed many themes and genres. Spielberg's early science fiction adventure films such as Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and E.T. Extraterrestrial were seen as archetypes of the modern Hollywood escapist filmmaking. In later years, his films began addressing numerous humanistic issues such as the Holocaust and transatlantic slave trade, civil rights war, terrorism in such films as The Color Purple, The Empire of the Sun, Schindler's List, Amistad, Saving Private Ryan, Munich, War Horse, Lincoln, Bridge of Spies, and The Post. His other films have included Jurassic Park, AI, and War of the Worlds. Spielberg won an Academy Award for Best Director for Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, as well as receiving other nominations. 3 of Spielberg's films, Jaws, E.T. and Jurassic Park, achieved box office records and came to epitomize the blockbuster film. The unadjusted gross of Spielberg-directed films exceeds $10 billion worldwide, making him the highest-grossing director in history. His personal net worth is estimated to be $3.6 billion. He's also known for his long-standing association with several actors, producers and technicians, and such as the composer John Williams, who has composed music for all but 3 of Spielberg films, The Color Purple, Bridge of Spies, and Ready Player One. Andy, your views, your opinions on this great director?
Well, he's just fantastic, isn't he? I would almost say he's faultless, up until recently for myself. But that's something we'll talk about, no doubt, later on. The guy does have daddy issues. It's evident in a lot of his films. You'll always notice there's a missing father figure or something.
That's right.
Yeah, and that kind of works with Ready Player One as well. I suppose that has that undertone in there. But then again, Ernest Cline was heavily influenced by Steven Spielberg, which is a great circle of life there, isn't it? I mean, it goes to show the impact the man had on pop culture. And has still to this day is having on pop culture. The renowned, well, not renowned authors, but authors of now, contemporary authors, are writing stories influenced by him and are now being picked up by Steven Spielberg and turned into movies. And if that doesn't say something about the guy's skill and the guy's gravitas in the movie world, then I don't know what does.
That's right. Let's talk about his first adaptation, which was a Richard Matheson adaptation of the book Duel. This film about a psychotic Peterbilt 281 tanker truck driver who chases a terrified driver, Dennis Weaver, off a small Plymouth Valiant and tries to run him off the road. Special praise of this film by the influential British critic Dilys Powell was highly significant to Spielberg's career.
Highly impactful to his career. This movie was originally a made-for-TV movie, but due to its success was eventually given a theatrical release. So, I mean, we're talking about Spielberg here, who was in his early 20s when he directed Jaws, and to go from at the time being picked up as a movie for TV and then being put out to cinema is outstanding. This is the youngest guy to get a contract in Hollywood at the time of 17 years old, and he starts working for a production company, full time with a contract. I mean, that is phenomenal. He dropped out of college, to become when did he get his bachelor's in filmmaking? Was it 2002 or something? Was it 2012?
Something very late on.
Yeah. And I mean, this guy essentially, there are some people, I believe, that are born to do stuff, and he's one of them. He is born to be a director and a producer, because this is a guy with no training, no background in it. He worked his way up from grassroots to become what he is. And Joel, to be your first major picture is phenomenal. This film is a gem. It is a real gem to behold. It's edge of your seat stuff.
It's relentless, isn't it? Pretty much. I mean, it's got the same kind of vibe as Mad Max in the kind of the chasing and the relentless haunting that the driver faces with this truck behind him. And I mean, it's just a masterpiece. I remember watching this very late at night. Now this must have been what? When did this come out? This film, 70. I don't know what year it came out, to be honest. But it's a pretty good start to a career.
Yeah, very good start to a career. I mean, let's go back. I'm going to try and find out when he actually. I mean, production-wise, he's done a lot more films than he's produced than he's actually directed. But
his second TV
Jewel
film
came out in 1971. Sorry,
71. His second TV film was Something Evil. This was made and released to capitalise on the popularity of The Exorcist, then a major best-selling book, which had not yet been released as a film. He fulfilled his contract by directing the TV film-length pilot of a show called Savage, starring Martin Landau, and Spielberg's debut film-length feature film was The Sugarland Express. I haven't actually seen that movie. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't, mate.
That was about a married couple who was chased by police as the couple tries to regain custody of their baby. Spielberg's cinematography for the police chase was praised by reviewers. And then we literally start getting into his major work, his collaborations with fantastic actors like Richard Dreyfuss. He rejected loads of offers to direct Jaws 2 and King Kong and Superman, but he went on to do Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1977.
Close Encounters of the First Kind. Sighting of an unidentified flying object. Close Encounters of the Second Kind. Physical evidence of a UFO. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Actual contact.
One of the rare films both written and directed by Spielberg. Yeah. Close Encounters was a critical and a box office hit, giving Spielberg his first Best Director nomination from the Academy, as well as earning 6 other Academy Award nominations. It won Oscars in 2 categories, cinematography and Special Achievement Award for sound effects editing. The second blockbuster helped secure Spielberg's rise. His next film, 1941, a big-budgeted World War II farce, was not nearly as successful, but it grossed over $92.4 million worldwide. That's a huge amount of money, isn't it?
Especially for 1979.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, my number one movie of Spielberg's is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It just tips E.T. just slightly over the edge because there's a lot to look for. There's a great depth in Close Encounters that I adore, and effectively, you know, what you're really getting is a guy who is living with his family. He doesn't really like his kids. He's not getting on with his wife. This episode happens to him when he's in his truck with those lights behind him, and I remember that when I first saw that scene where he's just sitting in his truck and you see those lights behind him, and then you see them just slowly rise over the truck. I mean, just something like that, you know, happening completely changed his life, and it's a very strange ending because, you know, here's a guy who goes off effectively with the ETs, and the girl that he finds tabletop mountain with and has this experience with, she gets her son back, but his poor family don't get to see their dad again.
No, this is it with Close Encounters. I look at this film and I think the impact it had on filmmaking, storytelling in film for a subject material such as extraterrestrials is paramount to what we have now. The guy, you're talking in the era, we've not long come out of the Flash Gordons and the Buck Rogers and everything's fantastical and aliens. Alien movies were always, they came down to kill us, invade us, and we're talking quite an emotional subject.
Yeah, I mean, 6 months after Star Wars came out, this film hit the cinemas in November of 1977, and I mean, I remember a quote that he once said that he was sitting in the White House showing Close Encounters to Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan turned around to him and said, "There's only 5 people in this room who know how true all this is."
Yeah. Interesting stuff, and that's my point with it. It kind of the closest I think we've got to something like Close Encounters again, and obviously this has been this style and this sort of story has been told many a time since, but Arrival is something that I feel is quite similar in tone. And for the time, we didn't get films like this. Like I say, it was always about aliens invading little green men, and this was a serious film. This was intelligent, and I think it was important to change the way we tell stories about aliens. And like you say, it was the more serious side, the more visceral, real side of extraterrestrials and things. And we didn't get that before.
Well, it's very gritty. I mean, in the same way that E.T. is, where you see the children's, the family and the lifestyle they're living, you get a real sort of sense of sort of grounding with it, with Close Encounters. Yeah, very, very much so.
Yeah, very important movie.
So after Close Encounters, Richard D. Zunak and David Brown offered Spielberg the director's chair for Jaws, a thriller horror film based on the Peter Benchley novel about an enormous killer shark. Now, where do you rate Jaws on the list of greatest Spielberg movies?
Very low.
He doesn't do it for me either.
No. I get the... I get how clever it is with the music. That's something. I noticed this when I went swimming with my daughter. She's never seen Jaws. She doesn't know what Jaws is. But that dun dun. I mean, that's not Spielberg. That's down to who did the soundtrack for that?
I couldn't tell you.
Right. Whoever wrote that, they captured something now that's quite raw and quite primitive. The way the melody works and those notes work. I did that noise in the swimming pool to my daughter, holding my hand up like a fin, and straight away she freaked out and was splashing about. She knew that meant danger. And it's so clever, that music in that film, that I think if you'd have taken the score away from that movie, and I don't think it would work as well.
Well, in the same way that Close Encounters has those notes.
Yeah.
Jaws' strings give you a sense of terror and fear, and the space between each strike of those chords. Whereas in Close
quite
Encounters,
reminiscent
you have this very high-pitched tune, the tune that...
Yeah. But I think it's quite reminiscent, the Jaws one, of early Hitchcock stuff, especially with things like The Birds, where those couple of notes can really incite fear into you. And it is a clever film for that. I'm just not a fan of the story. I think they put themselves in a lot of unnecessary bother going out to sea to look for this big shark.
Spielberg, I mean, he referred to this grueling shoot as his professional crucible, where he just found it extremely hard to make, despite the film's ultimate enormous success. It was nearly shut down due to delays and budget overruns. And the shark not working in salt water, which wasn't part of the plan. I mean, I think they expected it to just work, and it just didn't. It got stuck with all the salt in it. But it did amount to being an enormous hit, winning 3 Academy Awards for editing, original score, and sound, and grossing more than $470 million worldwide at the box office. Now that's doing better than what Solo currently is doing. It set the domestic record for box office gross, leading to what was then press described as Jaws mania. Jaws made Spielberg a household name and one of America's youngest multimillionaires, allowing him to do a great deal of autonomy for his future projects. UFOs became a massive part of him, because we know that a little bit later on we get to his best film to date, which is E.T. Although I just said Close Encounters is for a very different reason, but I think E.T. is probably his greatest moment.
Of course, yeah, I agree with you there. You can have films, like with Star Wars. For me, for instance, I always go back to Star Wars. Return of the Jedi is my favourite Star Wars films. Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars film. Yeah, there's a difference there. I can enjoy something more than something else, but appreciate that it's not the best one.
Well, by the time his greatest probably connection that he had with Star Wars was meeting up with his friend George Lucas, and Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first Indiana Jones film, was a huge success. The archaeologist and adventurer hero Indiana Jones, played by Harrison Ford, who Lucas had previously cast in his Star Wars film as Han Solo. The film was considered a homage to the cliffhanger series of the Golden Age of Hollywood. It became the biggest film at the box office in 1981 and the recipient of numerous Oscar nominations, including Best Director, Best Picture, and still considered a landmark example of the action-adventure genre. The film also led to Ford's casting of Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. A year later, Spielberg returned to the science fiction genre of E.T. Now, again, Raiders, mate. I mean, it's a complete film, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, if they hadn't made any more after that, I think on its standalone.
Yeah, but if they hadn't made any more, we wouldn't have got Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and where would I be?
Where would you be?
That's the greatest Indiana Jones film of the lot, and why are you laughing at me? Sorry, I can't keep a straight face for that one. But yeah, it's, again, Indiana Jones, perfect example of that. Temple of Doom is my favourite Indiana Jones movie because it's silly, over the top, and it's fun. Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best Indiana Jones movie. It's the best directed, it's the best complete story, and maybe some of it's nostalgia for me. That's why I prefer Temple of Doom. I remember being a kid, and I remember watching Temple, and I remember thoroughly enjoying it, and even now I still prefer watching it for fun. But there's no denying that Raiders is the best piece of work. To put it in a different way, there's a piece of work, isn't it? You know,
absolutely,
it's just perfectly executed.
One of the things I really love about his movies in the 80s was, although there was sort of really towards sort of early teens and adults, there was always something in his films that would scare the bejeebies out of you. I mean, the Nazi scene at the end with the opening of the Ark is a tough watch, that. And obviously in E.T. there was a couple of moments that really, I mean, when he comes out of the wardrobe, I mean, it scared the crap out of me.
As a child, E.T. was it terrified me. I could not watch that movie. And even now, I don't know if it's something inherent in me from being a child, it still puts the willies up me.
I mean, it's
really
the worst puppet, if it's a puppet. It's the worst guy in a suit, if it's the guy in a suit. But the film stands so well, even after all these years, doesn't it?
Indeed, mate.
It does. I mean, a beautiful score. I mean, I think you cry throughout that film with the friendship and the sadness of him leaving, and the happiness that E.T. gives him, and the happiness you feel.
Have you ever seen the video of the young boy doing the audition?
Yes, I have. Yeah,
it is raw and it's
powerful,
amazing. It is. I sit there and watch that, and I think he gave a better performance in that than he did in the film. But I think that goes down to Spielberg just knowing what he's doing. I mean, to get a young actor like that and to be able to convey those emotions in an audition is phenomenal. It's a shame we didn't see much of that young lad afterwards.
No, it's a shame, wasn't it, really?
You know,
but I mean,
it happens.
It does happen. I mean, the thing about this film was it was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, which it won 4 of them. Between 1982 and 1985, Spielberg produced 3 high-grossing films, one of those being Poltergeist, which he also co-wrote the screenplay. Now, that's a movie that it doesn't get regular viewing for myself, mainly because the horror genre is not really my thing, and I do find those kind of films very spooky, but it is a fantastic film, Poltergeist.
Poltergeist are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are of fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
They're here.
Well, again, it's one of those, isn't it? You don't have to like it, but you have to look at something for the importance that it has with filmmaking. Yeah, I think that's what you have to do sometimes. You have to go, right, well, this isn't a movie I enjoy, but you can see the importance of it. Yeah, Schindler's List, we'll get to this soon, is a prime example of that for me.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
You know, and you can look at some films and go, you know, it's not for me, but without this, we wouldn't have X, Y, Z. Yeah. And that's what Spielberg has always been, he is a George Lucas. They're a pioneer, aren't they? They're someone that has moved film forward over the years. And without them, we wouldn't have the things we have.
No, that's right. Well, part of the things, we've got Stranger Things now and various other TV shows, and the one that was huge for me as a kid was watching The Twilight Zone. Not just the black and white episodes, but the color episodes. And Spielberg helped to direct a segment of the movie Twilight Zone with his little segment called Kick the Can.
Yeah.
Goonies.
Twilight Zone movie, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a great little piece that was in that. He was also executive producer of The Goonies. Now, I know that's a big hit for you.
Very big hit, mate. It's one of my all-time favourites.
And now we're sort of talking that The Goonies may well be the most important film of its type because of the amount of movies that have actually come from that film.
Yeah. And just remember, Goonies never say die. Okay. Gremlins, executive producer on Gremlins as well around that time, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is busy. He has never stopped. I think, you look at the years of him, especially producer. I know obviously production, as being a producer of something probably doesn't take as much time as directing. You can be elsewhere doing other things. And you can probably be doing 2 or 3 projects at one point. But to be able to keep up this rigorous schedule over, we're talking 50 years of filmmaking.
It's over 4 decades.
Yeah, and the guy's, he's 70 now and he still looks better than me. And, it's a scary thing. And, some of the films he's just generally especially in the 80s, The Colour Purple, Young Sherlock Holmes, Back to the Future, Goonies, Gremlins, Poltergeist, Twilight Zone, E.T. These are important movies.
Absolutely.
We're talking essentially 90% of the reason why we're sitting here doing this podcast.
That was a PG rating, Gremlins. It's quite amazing because I think that all of his films have been roughly a sort of, certainly less than a PG-13. But his next directional feature, after he did The Twilight Zone, was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, teaming up once again with Lucas and Ford. The film was plagued with uncertainty for material and script, but this film was a fantastic and big, huge hit and rated as a PG by the MPAA, even though it had some very dark and some possibly the most violent indie film. Nonetheless, the film was still a huge blockbuster hit in 1984. It was on his project that Spielberg also met his future wife and actress Kate Capshaw. Now, you mentioned before the show that he got divorced from Kate Capshaw, was it, his first wife, and had to pay her about $100 million?
I believe it was Kate Capshaw, but £100 million settlement for a divorce.
Incredible. What's your thoughts on Indiana Jones Temple of Doom?
Like I said, mate, it's my favourite one. For enjoyment wise, I think when I was a kid, this was obviously regular viewing. Films like this is, these were the things we cracked on, left, right, every time you got an afternoon spare, you went to the video shop to rent something, you'd get an Indiana Jones or a Star Wars, and Temple of Doom was my go-to. I liked the mysticism in it. I like Indiana Jones anyway because I love myth and I love history and I love culture, and legend especially. And this, I liked all the Kalimar and the black magic, and as a child this was amazing, and especially being a PG, and I'm seeing a guy's heart being taken out. This wouldn't happen now. You wouldn't get this.
No, you wouldn't get that at all.
And yeah, I don't know why. Like I say, maybe it is nostalgia, and that's why I enjoy it so much. With Raiders, I didn't like all the Nazi stuff. I get that that's the time it was set. But there was something, I think it's a little bit funnier, Temple of Doom. It's not taking itself as seriously as Raiders. And I love the chilled monkey brains bit as well. So,
Well, he did go very serious after that film, because he went on to go and do The Colour Purple, an adaptation of Alice Walker's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel of the same name, about a generation of empowered African-American women during the Depression of the era of America, starring Whoopi Goldberg and future talk show superstar Oprah Winfrey. The film was a box office smash, and the critics hailed Spielberg's successful foray into the dramatic genre. It was an incredible movie. That, I mean, it really did touch a nerve for the black community, and certainly I remember watching that and feeling extremely sad and tearful during that film. He won Best Director nomination that year, and in 1987, as China began opening to Western capital investment, Spielberg shot the first American film in Shanghai since the 1930s, an adaptation of J.G. Ballard's autobiographical novel Empire of the Sun. Now, I know you're a big fan of that film as well, mate.
Yes.
This film starred John Malkovich and a young Christian Bale.
Mm-hmm.
The film garnered much praise from the critics and was nominated for several Oscars, but did not yield substantial box office revenues, which is a shame because it was a fantastic movie.
Yeah, it was, and I think again this was important for Spielberg. A film like this, I think it cemented him, and Colour Purple as well. It's not fair to leave that out, but these two films at this time in his career, he was doing 80s movies that were fun, family, adventure, rip roaring, swashbuckling, fun movies. And then he comes and knocks out of the park Empire of the Sun and Colour Purple. And people stand back and go, geez, like,
this guy can just cover all genres. I mean,
yeah.
That's 1987, the same year he co-produced Batteries Not Included.
Beautiful.
I mean, so he jumps from those kind of films that we love watching time and time again to having two very deep, meaningful movies, and then back into the foray of.
I think it's important. Sometimes.
Incredible.
Now, again, I'm going to go into Schindler's List here. Sorry, I'm going to jump forward just a little bit for this anecdote of how he covers a movie and the severity that some of these things can bring. And I think maybe this is why when he's filming two films like Colour Purple and Empire of the Sun, you need to do a film like Batteries Not Included to ground you back down. And when he was filming Schindler's List, he was having trouble getting through that movie. And the only way he could survive filming was once a week he would get a phone call from Robin Williams, who would do 15 minutes of stand-up for him over the phone, because it was genuinely depressing him filming Schindler's List. I mean, the workload, obviously, the style he was doing it in, and it's a big production. It's not a small film. He was having trouble getting through that. And I think it was a long, drawn out process, and he had to have some fun and a bit of light in his life. So Robin Williams helped him through that. Going back to this, I mean, this is one of those movies, like you say, it shows that he can do anything. He's going from Colour Purple, Empire of the Sun, Batteries Not Included, Indiana Jones, Close Encounters, Goonies. The list is, you wouldn't, unless you already knew it was Spielberg, you wouldn't be able to connect those dots.
Not at all.
No, you look at someone like Bay and you list off films that Michael Bay's done. You can go, yeah, I get it.
That's his thing.
It's Michael Bay. It's great. But this is like, where does his skill set finish? Like what? Well,
after the two forays into more serious dramatic films, Spielberg went on to go and direct the third Indiana Jones film, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Once again, teaming up with Lucas and Ford, Spielberg also cast director Sean Connery in the supporting role as Indy's father. Did you think that was a good casting?
No, I think it was current. That's what that was. That was, let's get this guy that's been James Bond for so many years in a film that could potentially not do as well as it should do, because of time. It was 5 years between movies, and he'd done some other things in between. And also, the time this was made, we didn't have internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have the hype train that we can create these days. 100 million pound in marketing to sell a movie, even if it's the biggest pile of poop there is. We didn't have that then. It was word of mouth, and that was about it. And I think with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, they slapped Sean Connery's name on it, and they sold an extra, 50 million bums on seats. Yeah.
Well, the film earned generally very positive reviews and was another box office success, becoming the highest grossing film worldwide that year. Its total box office receipts even topped those of Tim Burton's much anticipated Batman, which had been the bigger hit domestically. Also in 1989, he reunited with actor Richard Dreyfuss for the romantic comedy drama Always.
Beautiful
about a daredevil
movie.
pilot who extinguishes forest fires. Spielberg's first romantic film always was only a moderate success, and had mixed reviews. Going into the 1990s...
Sorry. Have you actually seen Always?
I haven't seen it. No.
Take time out and watch it, mate. It's
on
a
a list.
beautiful movie.
Funny enough,
It's got
research looking at Spielberg. There's at least 5 movies I've not seen of his.
Always is it's Audrey Hepburn's last film role.
Right.
And Audrey Hepburn is one of my all-time favourites. Like I said before, I have a big love for old black and white movies, and not even black and white, but old Hollywood, Charade, North by Northwest, Cary Grant movies, David Niven, Audrey Hepburn, and I have a massive love for her movies. And she's lovely in this. It's a beautiful goodbye to her. And it is a beautiful film. I know what you're like. You're very similar to me, and I guarantee that you won't get to the end of that without shedding a few tears.
It'll tickle me, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film.
Talking of Robin Williams, in 1991, Spielberg directed Hook, about a middle-aged Peter Pan, played by Robin Williams, who returned to Neverland. Despite innumerable rewrites and creative changes coupled with mixed reviews, the film proved popular with audiences, making over $300 million worldwide from a $70 million budget. In 1993, Spielberg returned to the adventure genre with the film version of Michael Crichton's novel Jurassic. Well, we all know about the theme park and the genetically engineered dinosaurs. With revolutionary special effects provided by his friend George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic Company, the film would eventually become the highest grossing film of all time at the worldwide box office, with $914.7 million.
And rightly so.
This would be the 3rd time that one of Spielberg's films became the highest grossing film ever. Now, that to you is, I know where that stands on your top 10 list, mate. And it is an epic film, And again, we didn't really need a sequel to that, did we?
No, we didn't.
It stood alone by itself.
Yeah, I've read all the books. There's elements taken here, there, and everywhere, passed about and mixed up. And Jurassic Park is, in my eyes, one of the most flawless pieces of directing, cinematography, and storytelling there's ever been. And that's why it's on my list so high.
And it is bloody scary in places, isn't it? that kitchen scene is just
terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. The bit with the cars in the mud, when the T-Rex first escapes. There's immediate threat because there's a 40-foot dinosaur standing in front of him but he's not fast. He's not doing anything. It's just him standing there in the rain, glaring. Especially when, what's his name? He's standing there with the flare.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That just is a beautiful shot. Absolutely beautiful shot. The whole thing, from start to finish, I remember that as a kid. In 93, I was 10 years old. And I remember the advertising for it. I remember the anticipation for it. I was sitting in McDonald's, and I could see outside a poster for Jurassic Park. And I can remember the necessity to need it, to watch it. And
there was probably a Jurassic Park Happy Meal as well at that time, wasn't it?
It might have been. And I wish I still had the toy if I did, if it was. But yeah, it's one of those, mate. I'm a big fan of Hook anyway as well, which is a very underrated movie in my eyes. But Jurassic Park is one of those movies that they create the man that we know. Yeah, that Spielberg is. It's films like Jurassic Park that nobody else could do in the way he did it. And we know that's true because look at was it the third one that he didn't do? What one didn't he do?
Third one.
Yeah. I quite like The Lost World. I quite enjoy it. I don't think it's a bad film by any accounts, but like you say, we didn't need it. Yeah. But the third one is a monster movie.
What a great Hook as well. Played by Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah. This film, Hook, is, in my eyes, the greatest sequel ever made because it is so clever. And I don't think people look at it in the right way. We had a film made, when was Peter Pan? 1950s, 1960s?
Oh, yes, possibly.
Yeah. We had this film made. It was a cartoon telling a story about a boy who never grew up and people that come from, from London, that went to Neverland. And then, 30 years later, you get this movie that's a live action film that stars a man called Peter Panam, whatever he calls himself in it. And he's he works in advertising, and he's got these repressed memories, and he knows there's something, and it goes, to me, it's the perfect sequel. It makes the cartoon real. It's really hard to explain how I see this, that the cartoon is almost like his memories. Yeah. And then you watch the live action one, and you got Maggie Smith, who is a delight as always to watch.
You've got Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell,
which I think's bad casting personally. That's the one thing that lets me down. It should have been
she was
Cyndi
very popular
Lauper.
at the time.
It should
Bob
have been
Hoskins is
Cyndi
the pirate
Lauper.
Smee.
Yeah, Bob Hoskins as Smee. That is again casting done right. He's
Produced
fantastic.
by Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah, she doesn't know what she's doing, so let's forget about that. But yeah, I mean, Hook to me is a really underrated movie. I don't see why it's so critically divided, because it's harmless. It's just one of those films. I mean,
It's a fun movie.
How can you be critical about it? It's fantastic, and there is actually a brilliant cameo in that movie that you probably don't know about. On the pirate ship, where they get the scorpions and they put them in the box with the scorpions, and that pirate gets thrown in there is actually Glenn Close.
Is it really?
It is indeed. But
Fantastic.
she just wanted to be in that movie. And yeah, Robin Williams as Peter Pan is again, great bit of casting. I mean, he was the boy that never grew up. Yeah, I mean, his persona as a person, I mean, obviously he had a dark side, it eventually turned out, but at the time, this is a guy that was the biggest child you could know.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and it was almost played into the film when he was so unnatural as a functioning adult in the advertising world. And when he finally got to do that car and jump in the air and fly, it was Robin Williams unleashed, and it was such a good film.
You'd think, though, from going from something like that to Spielberg's next film, Schindler's List.
Today will be remembered. Years from now, the young will ask with wonder about this day. Today is history, and you are part of it. 600 years ago, when elsewhere they were putting the blame for the Black Death, Casimir the Great, so-called, told the Jews they could come to Krakow. They came. They trundled their belongings into the city. They settled. They took hold. They prospered. In business, science, education, the arts. They came here with nothing. Nothing. And they flourished. For 6 centuries, there has been a Jewish Krakow. Think about that. By this evening, those 6 centuries are a rumor. They never happened. Today is history.
I mean, this is what we're talking about, isn't it? Is how a director can just shake things up in his direction. Schindler's List was based on a true story of Oskar Schindler, the man who risked his life to save 1,100 Jews from the Holocaust. Schindler's List earned Spielberg his first Academy Award for Best Director. It won Best Picture. With the film a huge success at the box office, Spielberg used his profits to set up Shoah Foundation, a non-profit organization that archives films testimony of the Holocaust survivors. In 1997, the American Film Institute listed it amongst the 10 greatest American films ever made, which moved up to number 8 when the list was remade in 2007. Now, in the cast of Schindler's List included Liam Neeson, Sir Ben Kingsley, Ralph Fiennes, Caroline Goodall, and Jonathan Segal. Again, this movie is not for the faint of heart, is it?
No, I've seen it once, and that's enough.
I've seen it once. I
think it demands your attention, and I think people should at least watch something like this once, more for the respect that a story like this deserves, like Oskar Schindler deserves. It's history at the end of the day, and if you don't want to know about it, then I think that's quite arrogant to deny a story like this. This is something that we should all be aware of. We learn from our mistakes, and stuff like this happened in our world, and it shouldn't have done. So you may not enjoy sitting there and watching it for an hour and a half, but you have no right to sit there and say that you shouldn't watch it. Like, there's people went through this, and I think people should understand that. And I don't want to put a heavy note on it, but it's
a very important film.
Yeah, it is. It's almost sitting there saying, no, we're the only existence in the universe, because that's just arrogant, to believe that. And I think it's the same with something like this. It's arrogant to sit there and go, I'm not going to watch that, it's too heavy. Well, I tell you what, people went through a lot worse than you sitting through 2 hours of that, mate. So sit there and watch it, and sit there, watch it, understand it. And, I think it can teach a lot of life lessons, a film like this. And it's, like I say, he met Robin Williams on the set of Hook, and this is what got him through making this film.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in 1994, it must have really hit him, because Spielberg took a hiatus from directing to spend more time with his family and build his new studio, which was DreamWorks. And that was with his partners Jeffrey Katzenberg and David Geffen. In 1996, he directed the sequel to 1993's Jurassic Park with The Lost World. Fan of this movie?
Yeah, very much. I enjoy it. It's one of those, isn't it? Like you say, you didn't need a sequel to Jurassic Park, but we got one, and it's fun.
It generated $700 million, that movie. Second biggest film of 1997 behind James Cameron's Titanic, which only just topped Jurassic Park, his first film, become the new record holder of the box office receipts. He went from that to, again, going back to something much darker, Amistad, based on a true story like Schindler's List, specifically about African slave rebellion. Despite decent reviews from critics, he didn't do as well as the box office. Spielberg released Amistad under DreamWorks Pictures, which was produce all of his films from Amistad onwards, with the exception of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, The Adventures of Tintin, and Ready Player One. In 1998, theatrical release was the Second War film Saving Private Ryan, about a group of US soldiers led by Captain Miller, played by Tom Hanks, sent to bring home a paratrooper whose 3 older brothers were killed in the same 24 hours, June 5th and 6th of the Normandy landing. Now, this for me is in, I think my top 5 of my Spielberg films, and we all know the first 20 minutes is just some of the greatest piece of filmmaking there's ever been.
Yeah.
It had a higher shutter speed. It was a handheld camera, so it gave a huge sense of realism. But after that, it was pretty much just, it was a movie that's just sort of on a mission just to find these boys. And there was a lot of conversation was going on. There's a few bullets flying here and there, but it was just basically, a rescue mission, and beautiful film.
Stunning.
The characters were perfectly played by the actors that were playing those characters, and there are some very, very, very sentimental moments in that movie.
Yeah, this film, I was 15 when this came out, and I remember, because it was a 15 as well, and I remember going to the cinema with a friend of mine from school. Bearing in mind, 15-year-old lads, we've got a certain mentality, haven't we, that you can't let your guard down, you can't be all touchy-feely with your emotions. And I remember sitting there watching Saving Private Ryan with my friend from school, both of us tears rolling down our cheeks, watching that first 20 minutes or so of that movie. And unashamedly, neither of us cared about that, because I think with something like this, you need to show that emotion. It's an emotional ride through that whole movie. And like you say, those first 20 minutes, it's full on.
Do you think it's the greatest war film ever made?
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. without a shadow of a doubt. There are films that have come close. There is obviously Apocalypse Now. There is Black Hawk Down, The Thin Red Line. I love my war movies, and the reason I love
I put Dunkirk in there as well, to be honest, because I still think that is a phenomenal movie.
Yeah, it is a phenomenal movie. It's Christopher Nolan. I mean, he's gonna do a good film, but things like Saving Private Ryan are lightning in a bottle. Which, if you look at Spielberg's list, there's a hell of a lot. He must have a shelf full of bottles of lightning, because he's fantastic. To do a film like Saving Private Ryan after doing Amistad, what effects does that have on someone's psyche? And I give full credit where credit's due to the guy. He deals with these subject matters with the utmost respect and taste. Yeah. Saving Private Ryan is definitely the greatest war movie ever.
The film's graphic, realistic depiction of combat violence influenced later war films such as Black Hawk Down, Enemy at the Gates. The film was also a major hit for DreamWorks, which co-produced the film with Paramount Pictures. And later, Spielberg and Tom Hanks produced a TV miniseries based on Stephen Ambrose's book, Band of Brothers. Now, did you catch that TV series when that was on?
No, I didn't.
It was a 10-part HBO miniseries. It follows Easy Company, one of the 101st Airborne Divisions of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. The series won a number of awards at the Golden Globes and Emmys. So again, had another massive hit on his hands. And obviously that this sort of theme of war since Schindler's List was pretty much sort of paramount in his head, that he wanted to cover as much of that particular period of time as possible. In 2001, Spielberg filmed fellow director and friend Stanley Kubrick's final project, AI, Artificial Intelligence, which Kubrick was unable to begin during his lifetime. The futuristic film about the humanoid android longing for love. AI featured groundbreaking visual effects, multi-layered, allegorical storyline adapted by Spielberg himself. Though the film's reception in the US was relatively muted, it performed better overseas for a worldwide total box office gross of $236 million. Your view and thoughts on AI, mate?
It's a fantastic movie. I think it's a
little long.
It's a little long.
It does have a double ending, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and I thought it ended 3 times during it.
Yeah, possibly 3 times.
Yeah, but it's one of those that I think it was never going to be a commercial success in the eyes of other Spielberg movies. If Kubrick had made it, it done exactly what Kubrick would have made out of a movie. It
does feel very much like a Kubrick film, though.
It does, and I think that's probably more of an homage from Spielberg to keep it in the vein that it was intended. It's like picking up someone's work. For instance, the Lord of the Rings books, with Middle Earth. There's a lot of things done by Christopher Tolkien that he's finished off for his father, and he manages to keep it in the same vein. And I think that's respect.
Certainly that scene where you've got the motorcycle sort of circus gang part in that movie, that felt very, very Kubrick to me.
It's a departure from Spielberg's general style of filmmaking. It is a bit long in the tooth, but that's what Kubrick would have done. It's very convoluted.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff that's not necessary in there, but it's a Kubrick movie directed by Spielberg, and that's what we've got to remember, that's what it is. Visually, it's outstanding. It still looks good now in places. Haley Joel Osment's performance is brilliant. Jude Law, I have a bit of a soft spot for him. It's a good movie. It's one of those, again, you really only need to see it once.
I agree. Spielberg and actor Tom Cruise collaborated for the first time for the futuristic neo-noir Minority Report, based upon science fiction short story written by Mr. Philip K. Dick about a Washington, D.C. police captain in the year 2054 who had foreseen a murder of a man he has not yet met. The film received strong reviews, with the review tallying website Rotten Tomatoes giving it 92% approval rating.
Right.
Now, Minority Report, mate.
Right, let's just break it down, right? Steven Spielberg, Philip K. Dick, and Tom Cruise. Now, what are 3 things I love? And you put them all together and you get one of, in my eyes, the greatest sci-fi movies of the last couple of decades. Yeah. Minority Report is phenomenal. And not only that, again with Philip K. Dick, it's one of those, I love Philip K. Dick, but I prefer the movies made out of his work. I think the guy is a visionary. To me, is a George Lucas. Now hear me out here, because I think George Lucas is a fantastic creator. He's a creative. He creates these worlds and these ideas. I don't think he's a very good director.
He hands it over, doesn't he, a lot of the time? And of course, with the ones that he did direct were the most critically shut down movies. So
yeah. And that's what Philip K. Dick is to me. He writes these stories. I mean, you've got to bear in mind, we're talking the same era as Richard Matheson and that. We're talking the 60s, some of these things were written. And you think about how far ahead of their time they were. But he couldn't,
not long ago, I was in a shopping centre, and as I walked in, I got a text message telling me, welcome to Churchill Square and go into the Lego store and get a special deal. And you just think, that's Minority Report.
Yeah.
Virtual reality stuff. It's just incredible. And now we have facial recognition, eye retina scanning.
Mm-hmm. And it goes into the store and it brings up adverts specific to him.
Well, we get this on Facebook and Google doing that. What we do see in this film is a brilliantly played character by Colin Farrell. And, I could never really work out whether he was actually a really bad guy in this or not.
Yeah.
It's so well, you were never quite sure if he was going to be the villain or not.
Yeah, it's well played because he's just a cop doing his job, really, isn't he?
Yeah.
And you can't actually fault him because you're looking at the system that they've built with the precogs. It's one of those, isn't it? Philip K. Dick always writes something that's about opening your mind and having a real think about the horrors of the future and the things we do. And something like precogs, is it predetermined that you could kill someone? Well, yes, it was, because that's what they're there for. But when it comes down to someone like Tom Cruise's character, he wouldn't kill someone, would he?
Unless it's Max von Sydow.
Unless it's Max von Sydow, yeah. Lor Santeca. But it's one of those. It built on the source material. Most of Philip K. Dick's books are short stories anyway, so there has to be a lot of filler. But they use those elements that are so important to the story, and they do it justice by changing it, because a lot of it's outdated now, and a lot of it is, even though it's ahead of its time, it still sits a bit funny on the palate when you're reading it now. That we know a lot more than we did then. But when you get a creative like Steven Spielberg behind the project, they make something like this, and it is fantastic. If you recommend Minority Report, anyone, just go watch it.
You've got to see it, and I must recommend the Blu-ray. Get the Blu-ray of this film, because it's not only is the film explosive and action-packed as a sci-fi thriller, but it looks stunning on Blu-ray.
And it still looks stunning now.
It still looks stunning now.
16 years after the fact, but then again, there's not much CGI in there, really, is there? Like, this is a film that's quite grounded in reality.
It's beautifully shot, which I think is, which means it doesn't have a great deal of CGI. But where it is there, it still is like spot on.
Very much. Let's move forward, because I could sit here and talk about Minority Report all night.
Well, after he blended CGI with live action, he went on to do a 2002 film called Catch Me If You Can, about the daring adventures of a youthful con artist played by Leonardo DiCaprio.
It's a true story as well, isn't it?
It also earned Christopher Walken an Academy Award for his Best Supporting Actor. A film known for its John Williams score and its unique title sequence, it was a hit both commercially and critically. Spielberg collaborated again with Tom Hanks, along with Catherine Zeta-Jones, for The Terminal, a warm-hearted comedy about a man of Eastern European descent who is stranded at an airport. It received mixed reviews, but performed relatively well at the box office. In 2005, Empire magazine ranked the Spielberg #1 on the list of the greatest film directors of all time. So 2005, he was already the greatest director. I mean, if he's not already the greatest director, back then he certainly was a highly acclaimed. In 2005, Spielberg directed a modern adaptation of War of the Worlds, co-production with Paramount and DreamWorks, and
more Tom Cruise.
And more Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Now, I really like this adaptation. I really like his connection with his children, and it was much more family orientated than the original.
Mm-hmm. And he does a lot of running in it as well. I love Tom Cruise running.
A lot of running, lot of staring, a lot of speaking very quietly under his breath, which he does a lot. ILM did the special effects and visual effects, and unlike E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which depicted friendly alien visitors, War of the Worlds featured violent invaders. The film was another huge box office smash, grossing over $591 million worldwide. Now, I think War of the Worlds is a brilliant movie. But it just, I don't know. I don't think many people actually have seen it. And if they have, probably just thought, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, isn't it? You've remade something that's already culturally important. Everyone knows the fables of War of the Worlds, the radio show, and everyone has seen the stage show. Everyone's heard the soundtrack, and you go and remake something like that. It's almost like remaking Star Wars. There's a lot of people out there that, I'm not watching it. I'm not going to watch that. Why are you doing that? And I'll tell you why, because when somebody like this does this, they make what they made, and it's amazing. I'm not a fan of the original. I've got to be honest, I'm not a fan. But this is brilliant. Who else is in it? It's Tim Robbins, isn't it? Plays the crazy old guy.
He does, yeah.
In the basement. And he can get a cast behind him. And it's Tom Cruise. Like, it's Tom Cruise, man. I'll watch anything.
I'm just checking out, just having a look. He had, Tim Robbins, Dakota Fanning, Miranda Otto, and Justin Chatwin, also starring War of the Worlds. Yeah. Well, he went on after that to make Munich, about the events following the 1972 Munich massacre of Israeli athletes at the Olympic Games, which was the second film essaying Jewish relations in the world. Obviously, his first one being Schindler's List. This film was based on a book called Vengeance by Canadian journalist George Jonas. It was previously adapted into a 1986 made-for-TV film called Sword of Gideon. This film received strong critical praise, but underperformed at the US and world box office. But it remains one of Spielberg's most controversial films to date. Now, it received 5 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Film Editing, Original Music Score, again by John Williams, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Director. It was Spielberg's 6th Best Director nomination and 5th Best Picture nomination. In June 2006, Spielberg announced he would direct a scientifically accurate film about a group of explorers who travel through a wormhole and into another dimension, from treatment by Kip Thorne and producer Linda Obst. In January 2007, screenwriter Jonathan Nolan met with them to discuss adapting OBST, Obst, and Thorne's treatment into a narrative screenplay. The screenwriter suggested the adaptation of a time element to the treatment's basic idea, which was welcomed by Obst and Thorne. In March that year, Paramount hired Nolan as well as scientists to form a workshop to adapt the treatment under the title Interstellar. Spielberg later abandoned Interstellar, which was eventually directed by Christopher Nolan. Now, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a project that Spielberg was very interested in. Spielberg directed Indiana Jones and the Crystal and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which wrapped filming in October 2007 and was released in May 2008.
Now, can I defend this film, please?
You can indeed.
I feel like
786 million worldwide.
Well, that says something about it, doesn't it? Now, this film is, again, I wouldn't say divisive. I think it's just generally critically panned these days, especially by sort of people like us. Now, the biggest takeaway I get from it with people moaning is, aliens, it was silly, it was over the top, we saw this UFO fly up. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, with a sound, intelligent mind, what's more believable? A Ark of the Covenant Nazi chest story, a man ripping someone's heart out through their chest using magic, or an alien?
Or aliens that built pyramids.
Yeah, what one's more realistic?
Well, it's the ancient alien theory, isn't it?
Well, of course it is.
Ancient astronaut theory.
Yeah. And it irks me when I hear people moaning about the alien element of this movie, saying it was over the top, because I think that's more grounded in reality than any of the other stories we've had. Now, if that's your problem, because you want fantastical legend, then that's fine. But don't say that it's because Aliens is ridiculous. Because I tell you what, chilled monkey brains and melting 1,000-year-old soldiers in a cave somewhere with a wooden cup is a lot more ridiculous. I think what they try to do with this movie is there's that sheen to it, isn't there? When you first start watching it, it feels like, I don't feel like they're making an 80s movie. I feel like they're making a 1950s movie. There's something quite Hollywood about it when it first starts. Not that that's a problem. I enjoy it. There are some silly things in there. The fridge actually annoys me more than anything else in the nuclear blast. But generally, I don't think it's as bad as people make out.
I loved it. I loved it. I like
Sheila Booth.
Don't you?
No, I really detest the guy. In fact, I like it more that he's having a breakdown these days. With the
I
whole
really
Do
like
It
him. I think
videos
he's a
and
great actor, personally. It was nice to see Karen Allen back in the mix.
Yeah,
Kate Blanchett and Ray Winston.
Yeah, and it's a good film.
Snare.
It's a good film. It's not as good as the others, and that's okay. In my eyes, it's a Phantom Menace. Yeah, I'm going to make Star Wars analogies all the way through this. It's the Phantom
That's fine,
Menace.
mate. I get what you're saying.
I'll watch it. I can enjoy it. It's not Temple of Doom. It's not Raiders of the Lost Ark. But it's a really good film. Like, if it wasn't for the other three movies, you'd be sitting there going, oh, that was bloody good. But people are, fandom, we spoke about this earlier, fandom's horrible. And they can take a film like this and rip it apart for no just reason. Yeah, so that's my defense of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's not fantastic. It's not the best Indiana Jones, but it's fun. What more do you expect?
Spielberg's next directed film was the historical drama film Lincoln. Have you seen Lincoln?
I thought he did Tintin before that and Warhorse.
Well, he did Tintin and Warhorse. I was going to skip over those two.
Oh, right, okay, sorry.
To be honest, I think... were they really Spielberg movie? I suppose they were, really.
Yeah, I didn't like Tintin anyway. It's not my thing. And War Horses, again, it's an adaptation, isn't it? So, but let's move on to Lincoln. Let's go on to that.
I think Lincoln. I saw Lincoln last week actually when we was sort of planning this show. Starring Daniel Day-Lewis as United States President Abraham Lincoln and Sally Field as Mary Todd Lincoln, based on Doris Goodwin's best-selling book Team of Rivals. Again, this is another one of those movies that you think you feel you should watch. It's historically important, it had widespread critical acclaim, this movie as well. So it's definitely worth a view. Nominated for 12 Academy Awards, the most of any film that year that this film came out. And again, Best Director for Spielberg. What else? It was also announced in May 2nd of 2013 that Spielberg would direct a film about a story of a US sniper, Chris Carl, titled American Sniper. However, on August 5th of 2013, it was announced that Spielberg had decided not to direct that film, and it was instead directed by Clint Eastwood.
Do you know why he didn't do that?
No, go on.
No, I was wondering if you did, because I have some problems with American Sniper. I don't know why he didn't do it, but I was just wondering if it fell into this same reason. But my problem with American Sniper is I think it glorifies that person, because the interviews I've seen of him, he's quite brash, and he this guy's killed a lot of people as a sniper, and I understand that the skill that's involved in what he does is quite outstanding, but I've heard stories that he was quite braggy about it.
Well, I think based on the fact that he's made Colour Purple, Schindler's List, and...
No, I'm talking about the sniper.
I think that he probably pulled out of that because he'd like to tell a story that evokes emotion and sympathy, and this guy you can't really feel that much sympathy for.
No, exactly. And I mean, I know some people in the army, and they won't even talk about things that have happened. We both know people in the army as well. And I think what I hear from this guy is quite gun-ho and quite detached from his emotion with it. And I don't like that. And like you say, I think maybe with someone like Spielberg, he can be sensitive with his storytelling. I mean, for a white man to be able to direct films such as Amistad and Colour Purple and do it justice is very, very, how do I put this? He handles it well, because generally people can make slip up with things like that that aren't in that culture. They can get things culturally wrong. They can make it kind of a little bit cringeworthy sometimes. They can hit the wrong marks and the wrong steps, and he does it well. Yeah, and he's sensitive to these things. So that was all. I just wondered if there was a reason why he didn't do American Sniper, because
it's very likely also that he had his eye on making Bridge of Spies, which was the next film he made.
yes,
A Cold War thriller based on the 1960 U-2 incident, focusing on James B. Donovan's negotiation with the Soviets for the release of a pilot, Gary Powers, after his aircraft was shot down over Soviet territory. The film starred Tom Hanks as Donovan, as well as Mark Rylance and Amy Ryan and Alan Alda, with a script by the Coen brothers. The film was shot from September to December of 2014 on location in New York, Berlin, and Poland. Bridge of Spies received positive reviews from critics and was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor. And Spielberg went on after that to do the BFG, an adaptation of Roald Dahl's celebrated children's story starring newcomer Ruby Barnhill. And I loved that film. That was fabulously well done.
very magical.
Yeah.
Very well done. It's hard to, again, like I say, when you adapt something that's already been done, to do it right. And I think he did there. He did a very good remake of a cartoon there. I miss David Jason as the BFG, but it's a very, very good adaptation. That
I think
very
what
good.
really helped this film was that it was written by the screenwriter Melissa Matheson, and she wrote that just before she died, and she helped write E.T., which is probably is so sentimental and
fantastic, yeah.
beautifully done. Yeah,
It's handled well. Then we come on to The Post. Is it?
Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep.
Not seen it.
Not seen it.
No.
Not seen it either.
No, it doesn't interest me, that. No.
Then we go on to his last movie. He's taking a deep breath. Spielberg directed the adaptation of the popular sci-fi novel Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. The film stars Ty Sheridan, Olivia Cooke, and Ben Mendelsohn, Simon Pegg, and Mark Rylance. It began production in London in July 2016, a year before The Post, which was filmed, edited, and released during a lengthy effects-heavy post-production period for Ready Player One. Ready Player One was originally slated to be released on December 15th, 2017 by Warner Brothers, but was pushed back to March 29th, 2018 to avoid competition with Star Wars The Last Jedi. It had its world premiere at the South by Southwest Film Festival on March 11th of 2018.
And that's where it should have stayed.
Well, according to you.
According to me. No, I understand. My views here are very jaded. I can't give a...
So Ready Player One, the novel, came out in what year?
I think it was 2015.
I think that's when I read it, mate. And so it was a good couple of years before the film came out. And so by the time I got to see the film, I'd pretty much forgotten really about the book and got excited when I heard that Ready Player One was being done and that Spielberg was doing it, which is the only director who could have done that film. I think it's visually spectacular. I think it gets to where it should go. I think it's well directed. I think it's got a fantastic soundtrack. I think there is it's again, it's one of these films that's going to need
2011, sorry.
It's good. 2011. It's going to take multiple viewings just to see everything that's in that film, because it just bombards you with characters from everything. And I mean, really, it's a Spielberg greatest hits film, isn't it?
It would have been better if they'd ever made the book, though. If they'd have made the film out of the book, it would have been better. It would have sold a lot more.
of Ready Player One, the
That's
book.
like me saying Neighbours is an adaptation of Star Trek because it's got people in it.
You could be right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I wonder how many of our listeners have seen it, and your views and comments on the Facebook page on Ready Player One would be really great, or send us a comment on it.
Please
We'd
do.
like to hear what you think, because we're very divided, Andy and I, on this film.
I want to make it clear here.
I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to when this gets released in I can't remember what it is now. I think it's a couple of months' time. It comes out in digital, and I will definitely be watching it a couple of more times.
I want to make it clear how I stand with this book.
Mm-hmm.
I have read this book somewhere in the region of probably about 30 to 40 times. I could pretty much verbatim a lot of it. I know it front to back, upside down, inside out. And when I heard about the film, I was excited. I wasn't a naysayer. I love the Harry Potter movies. They do a lot wrong from the books, but I can see they've captured the magic. I love The Martian, the book. And the film is a great adaptation. One of my favourite books ever written is The Road, and the adaptation of that is fantastic. They all miss elements of the book. Well, The Road is an exception there because I think it's pretty much perfect adaptation. But a lot of them miss elements of the books because you have to. There's exposition. You don't need to know about things from Harry Potter that are in the books. Of course, there's exposition. That's what a book does. Gives you more time to tell depth and stuff. But with Ready Player One, a lot of it was aesthetic, a lot of it was licensing, and you know, when you get a director such as Spielberg on board and he won't allow some of his IPs to be used in a movie that is based around his work, why? I don't get it. There was a story laid out there that was essentially the core bits were there. There was bits you could have left out, but I don't understand why they changed the riddles. I don't understand why they changed the tasks. I don't understand why they changed the characters, what they looked like and who they were. They gave away big parts of the film the parts of the book that should have been revealed later on, such as who H was. For some reason, everyone lived in the same town together, you know, this worldwide web of video game players, and all of a sudden when they want to meet up, it's funny, you live 2 doors down from me. Like,
Little bit convenient.
Yeah, and there
was Ernest Cline on set during the film?
Ernest Cline had a hell of a lot to do with this movie, and this is something that bothers me as well with this. And I kind of feel like Ernie Cline's hands were tied. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of this, and he may really love it, and that's great. More power to him. Fantastic if you do. It's not for me. But my problem with it is when you spend your whole life and your career basing your work and your ethos on somebody's work such as Steven Spielberg, and then a book that is pretty much an homage to his whole career, you write and it's picked up by that said director, how are you supposed to turn around and say you don't like it? Your hands are tied. He can't sit there and after it and go, oh, do you know what? It's not my thing. You know, you can't do that because then you're essentially denouncing everything you've ever worked for. I've seen it with directors before. Now, I'm a big fan of the Darren Shan books, and there was a film made called The Vampire's Assistant, Cirque du Freak, The Vampire's Assistant, and they screwed the pooch. There's 12 books altogether. They only ever made one film, and we never got anything else. Darren Shan had his hand in that, and I saw him at a couple of years after the book came out at a signing. I mean, I followed the guy around for months. I've got everything of his signed. And I saw him after the film came out a couple of years, and he was a bit more vocal about it. And somebody in the queue asked him, will there ever be another one? And his response was a lot more amiable than it used to be. He used to kind of sidestep it and go, I don't know, that's not up to me. But at this particular one, he was very much, I don't think, not verbatim, but it was pretty much like, after how the last one performed, I don't think we'll ever get another one, and I can't see myself wanting to. And I think that's my point there, is that he wasn't emotionally involved with a studio or the director, so he could kind of be a bit more honest after the fact. You know, you can't do it straight away, I get that. You can't turn around when your film's coming out and going, I think it's a big pile of poo. But I think that's how he felt from the start, from what I get from when I've seen him. Now, with Ernie Cline, what are you supposed to say to Steven Spielberg? How can that man sit there as he reveres him? He looks at him like he idolizes him. How do you sit there when he's making your film going, no, I don't like that? You know, you probably put all of his trust and his faith into Steven Spielberg making this movie. And unfortunately, it's kind of ruined the book for me as well, this film, because since I've seen the film, I haven't picked the book up. Now I'm going to give it some time and I'm going to go back to it, and I hope that I can enjoy that book. And then I'm going to watch the film again, and I hope that I can try and get something out of it that everyone else seems to, because I know it is me here. I know I'm on my own.
I mean, I don't know many people that have read a book at least 30 times. So, you know, having that kind of background, it's going to be very difficult, mate, to enjoy a film that isn't the book. And this is always the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is you're always going to compare. I think, as you said earlier about Philip K. Dick's work, movies generally are better than the books when it comes to his work.
Very much.
But this one particularly does not settle well and sit well with yourself. No,
not at all. And I know I'm the exception to the rule. I know that. So, hey ho, I can't change it, and it's one of those things that maybe I'm glad it's not as good as the book, because then I can enjoy the book as it is, you know, in its raw form, how it was intended. I'll go back to it one day and hopefully I can recapture that.
So you're excited about Spielberg's plans for a 5th installment of Indiana Jones?
Yes, very much so. Because I know they're going to have to play on it. They're going to have to play it the right way. They're going to have an old Harrison Ford. It's not going to be... This is going to be a passing of the torch movie that we should have got with like we should have got with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That, you know, they set that up obviously that his Shia LaBeouf was going to get that hat one day and become Indiana Jones. I think they're looking at the long game here of we're going to get a Chris Pratt or someone of that caliber take over the mantle of Indiana Jones and maybe have him in an Indiana Jones dad's position as a la The Last Crusade. We're going to have him try and roll under the door and put his back out, and we're going to have him flick the whip and not be able to do it and swing. He's going to fall off, you know, those sort of things. I don't know.
I mean, Harrison's one of these people that, you know, he can see an end to his character, and I think perhaps they might just give him the send-off that, you know, he wants for his character. Do you not think?
So essentially we're living in the era of Harrison Ford digging up old characters and killing them off.
Well, could well be, mate.
Yeah.
Well be. I mean, This as yet untitled film is set to star, obviously, Mr. Ford, and will be produced by Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall. It's being written by David Cope, who has written numerous other films for Spielberg, including the last Indiana Jones film. It's really set for release by Disney on July 19th, 2019, but will now begin filming in the UK of April 2019 and come out July 10th, 2020. Spielberg plans then to direct a film remake of the musical West Side Story. This will be his first musical, if it's going to be a musical. He's adapting the classic show's work for Spielberg. This is Tony Kushner who's going to be working with him. He's going to be working with him through the original musical score, which will remain unchanged as the late 1950s setting. In January 2018, he began an open casting for the 4 lead roles, 3 of the roles being specifically for Latino characters. Spielberg had planned to film the long-planned adaptation of David Kurtz's Kidnapping of Edgardo Motaro in early 2017 for the release of the end of that year, but production has been postponed. It seems like he's got quite a lot of work on his plate as it is, mate. What else has he got going on? He's looking to also work on, let's have a look, as he's got here. He's looking to... let's have a look. I think he's got a lot going on. In April 2018, it was announced that Spielberg would be directing a film adaptation of the Black Hawk comic book series. Warner Brothers Pictures distributed the film, with David Cope writing the script. During an earlier interview in 1981 for Raiders of the Lost Ark, Spielberg was likened to the film. Said he really liked the Black Hawk series, so that's probably something he's looking to go. He's got a lot of projects on hold as well. So
he's got a lot of announced projects as producer as well. I think this is where we're going to be looking at him coming.
He's looking to obtain the screen rights to make a film based on Microsoft's Halo series.
He is TV series.
Yeah. John Wyndham's novel Chucky. He's interested in, and actually bought the rights for that and interested in directing it.
Real Steel 2.
A Steady Rain, Pirate Latitudes, 39 Clues, and a remake of When Worlds Collide. He also bought the rights for the life story of Martin Luther King Jr., which I can definitely see him doing that. Spielberg involved not only as a producer but a director for that film. He's a busy man.
He is, mate. I mean, even down to things like he's doing his executive producer on the Animaniacs reboot for the 1990s cartoon. He's getting a reboot. There's the Men in Black spin-off that he's attached to. Jurassic World 3, which has been confirmed. He's doing another Tintin film. Then we've got Robo-Apocalypse, Real Steel 2, Gremlins 3. These things. And obviously Amazing Stories is coming back as well, apparently. And he's going to be attached to that, which he used to do back in the 80s. So, I mean, this guy is relentless. And at 71 years old...
Impressive.
It is impressive, mate. I mean, admittedly, when you can afford yourself a $200 million yacht, I'm sure you're pretty much in good health, aren't you? When you've got that sort of money, you've got people to look after you. But, well,
let's wrap this up with my top 10 Spielberg films. And I think, I've pretty much got the best ones covered here. So, it was a very close, number one, but I shall start at number 10 with Catch Me If You Can. Number 9 was Schindler's List. Number 8 is Jaws. Number 6 is Minority Report. I got that right. Let me go again. Catch Me If You Can, Schindler's List, Jaws, Minority Report, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Jurassic Park, Saving Private Ryan at number 5. All right, here we go. Whatever it is. And Raiders of the Lost Ark, number 3. Close Encounters at number 2. And E.T. at number 1.
In 1975, he directed Jaws. In 1978, he directed Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In 1981, he directed Raiders of the Lost Ark. And now, Steven Spielberg brings us E.T., the Extraterrestrial. We will witness the arrival, the search, the desertion, the fear, the discovery, the friendship.
I'm keeping him.
The secret. The love. The warning. The signal. The mystery. The danger. The intrusion. The wonderment. The enchantment. The hope. The connection has been made. Universal Pictures presents Steven Spielberg's E.T., the Extraterrestrial.
So after much of which one is going to be my number one, I thought, do you know what? I've seen E.T. many more times than Close Encounters, and it is absolutely his greatest film, I think.
I can try and do a top 10 on the fly if you want, but I definitely know that number.
I don't know how I got my numbering system was so confused then, because I had swapped two films around, which was Jaws and Minority Report, which I wanted a little bit higher, but there we go. Go on ahead, mate.
Okay, so I'm going to start Jurassic Park. Number 1. I'm going to go from 1 to 10 here because it's going to be easier for me on the fly. So number 1, Jurassic Park, without a shadow of a doubt. Number 2, E.T. Number 3, Close Encounters. So I can see our top 3 there sits pretty much the same. Number 4 is Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Number 5, sorry, is Hook. I don't care what people
It's a
think.
wonderful film.
Yep. Number 6, I'm going to go with Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom.
Right.
Number 7, Minority Report.
Yep.
number 8, I'm going to go for Jewel, because I think is a cracking movie, and I implore anyone that hasn't seen it to go and watch it. Number 9, War of the Worlds, and I know that our friend is going to love me putting in 2 Tom Cruise movies in now. And when was I? Number 8 or 9 was I at? Okay.
Number 10 is...
Number 10, I'm going to go for Catch Me If You Can too, because I didn't watch that movie until probably about 3 years ago. When my wife said to me, no, watch it. And yeah, I was hooked, start to finish. And DiCaprio is one of my favourite actors anyway. So, yeah. It's Damon, isn't it? Or is it DiCaprio, that one?
It's DiCaprio.
It is DiCaprio.
It's a brilliant Bob.
Yeah.
Highly advised watching that film.
Phenomenal movie. But yeah, so Spielberg, man.
Thanks very much for listening, guys, to our Spielberg special.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you next time on Retro Inc. Podcast. I've been Adam, and my co-host...
Andy. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. Take care.